want to thank you for having this discussion with me. We're going to be discussing the Bubishi, what you're currently working on, everything, just as you wish. Take it where you want.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And as I say, it was nice, although we've known each other for years.
Right.
And had certainly corresponded back and forth, and then of course worked more closely together to help establish the Shihankai. This is the first opportunity we've really had, other than the failed recording interview the other day,
right,
to speak together and to speak face to face, actually. So thanks for that opportunity. And
no, it's been great because I've been a fan of your work, the Bubishi. I've been studying that thing for many, many years, and it's revealed so much for the Kyusho world, and I want people to understand just the depth that it has given us already, and I think the depth that it's going to give us in the next couple decades.
Well, okay, look, how about we start off? Let me start off by walking back down through memory lane to describe a little bit about how I came across the Bubishi in the first place.
Sure.
And what was going on in my life at that time. Some of your readers or followers may not realize that in spite of me being recognized today as a teacher of traditional karate and kobudo and swordsmanship and jiu-jitsu, I actually started off in judo in September of 1964. And I grew up in a little town out on the east coast of Canada called St. John, New Brunswick, and we saw a documentary film at my school shown called it was called Road to the Olympics. I believe it was made by the National Film Board of Canada. It's a documentary highlighting the path of Doug Rogers, who'd been the Canadian judo champion, the world judo champion. Then he became in August of 1964. He also became the first Canadian Olympic medalist, winning the silver medal, losing only to Anton Giesing, the Dutchman, in the first judo. So, as a kid, you can imagine looking at something like that. And yeah, I'm familiar with comic books, and I love Batman and Superman, the hero that kids, what kid doesn't, But here, you're actually watching, this is not a fictitious cartoon character, it's a real human being. And the transformation for me, he was a pilot for Canada in those days. And he went to Japan for 6 weeks. He wanted to stay for 6 years. He learned Japanese. He learned to speak the language. He became a champion. And little did I know at that time that documentary would have such a profound impact upon my life that I would actually image much of what his journey was about in those days. So, but my dad got transferred in the summer of love, man, 1969. So we get transferred from his job on the east coast of Canada out to the thriving metropolis of Toronto, a city now 8 million people.
Yeah.
I came from a town of 50,000 people, so you can imagine. And not only that, but it was, that 1969, 70, that was that mecca of the golden era of martial arts as well, the blood and guts here. And there was a dojo, a mogun, or a dojang, or a training hall in just about every corner of Toronto in that area. And to get to, and I, of course, went back to Okinawa karate with, and I'd done judo in St. John, and I better just throw the karate part in there. One day I went to the judo dojo at the YMCA where I was training, and I either got there too early or too late, can't remember exactly when, and I watched the judo guys punching and kicking. I went, oh, that's pretty impressive. I haven't learned that part of judo yet, and it was a little karate group from the University of New Brunswick who'd been training in there for the day. Long story short is they invited me on the mat. The tram is already staying in the gi waiting to train, and they said, no, the judo people are not training there, but you're welcome to train with us. And that was in 1967, right. So that was my first opportunity to start training karate. So when we got to Toronto, a couple of years later, I just went directly into our branch school in Toronto, headquarters school, which was Mr. Soroka, Masami Soroka, who's referred to affectionately, who recently just passed away, as the father of the karate movement in Canada. But where I lived, in order to get to the dojo, I had to go through Chinatown in those days. And so Chinatown of that era was a real sights, the sounds, the smell, the cultural differences. I never, there weren't any Chinese people where I came from. In spite of Canada being a multicultural country, it was. I was out in the boonies. It was Scotch, English, and Irish where I came from. And so I was very captivated by that whole Asian thing, and there were no less than 2 kung fu schools on the same street on the way to my dojo, and ironically, I would become a student in both of those schools. And interestingly enough, on my trip to Canada this year, my Canada, the US, and South America seminar tour, I will actually be hooking up with a couple of guys that I used to train with in those kung fu days. And actually, the guy from Angry White Pajamas, the book, Robert Mustard, who's a world famous Yoshinkan Aikido instructor. He lives back in Canada. I was in Japan for many years. He was actually one of the kung fu guys I trained with back in those days. Few people know that about him as well. So when I started teaching as a professional in 1973, albeit at a pretty young age, I was a kung fu instructor. And a lot of people don't know that about my background. And not only that, but I was a very avid competitor as well, and won a lot of competitions. And I was always an all or nothing type guy. That was the Bruce Lee era as well, and I was, hanging out in Chinatown with these guys all the time. So anyway, there was a store right next to the Sum Sing restaurant where we used to eat after training. With all the, and everybody was Chinese at the school. There was only a handful of us. Caucasians were training in, non-Chinese were training in the dojo at the time, Mogun. And the bookshop next door, I used to love to go in there, after training before a bike eat and just look through all the martial art magazines and stuff like that. And, a young, so a teenager in those days, right? So I didn't have a whole lot of money, as most teenagers don't, especially in those days.
Right.
And I remember seeing this one book. Hang on just a minute, I'm just going to show you. I still have that book, by the way.
Oh, cool. That's amazing that you still kept that book after all these years. Pardon the skipping voice here, folks.
This book right here.
Wow.
You can see on the back. I don't know if you can see it on the back.
Yep.
This is $2.40. I could afford that back in those days, but it's what this book is. Oh, hang on. Exit. I'll be right back again.
Okay. Again, the connection isn't snappy, folks, so bear with the mistimed voices sometimes. There's great information coming up.
Oh, yeah. Apologies. I keep forgetting that this is an interview. We're recording this.
That's all right. I was talking while you were gone.
People are going to learn how incompetent I truly am here. So, okay. So, so first of all, sir, this book here is called Seipai. You read it backwards in the old style as opposed to forward in the modern style. It says Seipai no Kenkyu, and it means the study of Seipai Kata.
Wow.
It was written in 1934 by Mabuni Kenwa, the man who pioneered Shitoryu, the student Higo no Kanjo, and Ito's uncle, right, along with a bunch of other guys.
Right.
And you can see the pictures in here of Mabuni Sensei. And this is a kind of considered a rare book, by the way. I'm a collector of those rare books. I have lots of them. And you can see a lot of the pictures in here of him and with the Konishi Yasuhiro doing some techniques, and you can see the Seipai Kata in there and the application practices. But interestingly enough, as you get back to the second, watch this from this page on. Look what we have here now. Oops. Sorry, my fingers are too fat. There you go. Oh, look at that.
Ah, there they are.
There's 6 chi hands, you see, and this is described here as the Do-ki shu. Do-ki shu. 6 ki, like Aikido, means energy, and shu is the hononymic pronunciation, or the alternative pronunciation. We say the kunyomi or onyomi, pronounced of te for hand. So it means the 6 energy hands, and underneath it says Shorin Ryu, and the show, you see the show that they use there.
We got it.
Is actually it's mispronounced. It's miswritten. It's not supposed to be that show. It's supposed to be show for shall, like shall they know show, you know, which means little forest style. Anyway, and then as you go through the rest of this book, you can see. Look at this. It's the Bubishi.
Right.
And so Mabuni Kenwa, 1934. Actually published the Bubishi, and I have the actual handwritten copy of Mabuni's Bubishi. I'll get to that a little bit later.
Wow, amazing.
So anyway, now let me get back to this book just for a minute. So you have, this is the original book here. I have an original copy of it. This is the Chinese pirate copy.
Aha.
And you can see right here in the back, it has the Taiwan Chinese publication details on it. In fact, to tell you the truth, this is, by the way, this is the same book that my colleague Ken Penland used in his effort to translate his Bubishi. Sadly, however, Ken could never, and Ken of course couldn't speak really right Chinese. Few non-Chinese can, but he was still fascinated by it. And so he farmed out piece at a time to get it translated in Los Angeles, Chinatown. The problem is that he could never get it published. He didn't find a publisher to publish it. This is where George Alexander enters into the picture, who turns around and then publishes his book.
Oh.
Sadly, however, and I don't know the politics behind the business there, but it would ultimately become known as George Alexander's Bubishi. I don't know that that's actually true, to tell you the truth. But that comes, other than Mr. Ogura's 48 pictures, it comes from this one here, you see. And for those of you who know one of our IRKRS members and a good friend of mine, Andy Cross, Andy's just done a feature on comparing those two Bubishis. Andy will also be one of the other contributors, along with yourself, Joe Swift, and
Jesse Enkamp.
Who?
Jesse Enkamp.
Yeah, sorry, Jesse. Forgive me, Jesse. But who will be looking at something from the anthropological, historical, tactical, and technical, and of course the NUMAC part. Thanks very much to you. So anyway, I see this book in the bookstore. We're back to the Chinatown
right.
bookstore, and I start looking at it, and I said, "Well, it's not kung fu, it's karate," because I can see the pictures of the karate guys, and in the background, oh gosh, look at all this. So this book captivated the hell out of me, and I purchased it, and that
nice.
seems like 1972 or 1970. It might have even been 1974, but I think it's around 73, 74. So that's how long ago I came into contact with this book. And then many years would go by, and it just became another book in my line. We have to be careful that the conformist mentality from today, that we just, any 9-year-old kid knows I could close my fist and punch him in the face. It would be almost ridiculous to assume that a person doesn't know how to do that today.
Right.
Who's never even had a lesson in fighting. But interestingly enough, to be able to clench your fist, turn around and punch somebody in the face, it was an unknown phenomenon a couple of hundred years ago with the Chinese or the Japanese. And we can talk a little bit about that later. But it's knowing something about the culture which helps widen our understanding of the art that brings us together. And so when I started to look at these older texts, I started realizing it's the work of the pioneers that help us better understand the past. And something Mr. Kim said to me back in the day was a term called onko chishin, which means that if you study the old, it's easy to understand the new. In other words, you understand how the genesis of the birth, of the origins of something. And then if you understand what forces affected its growth and direction, it's not then subsequently more difficult to understand why it is the way it is today. And when we put that together with this Bumbu-ryodo, the physical, the non-physical, as a single pathway, we get this even balance, and we can back off a little bit from I've got to be the best, win at all costs, and start to realize that this is a pathway between not just self-protection, but also self-perfection. And not to think for a moment that we're ever going to be perfect. I
Right.
don't think of myself at all as a perfect person. In fact, in my case, it's probably more imperfect than anything else. But I think it is our imperfections or our mistakes or our failures who really define who we are. And that's where I use that term, learning to climb out from the blazing furnace of personal adversity is really the thing that makes us who we are. And when we came across, say, the writings of the Bubishi, and I mentioned just a moment ago that Mabuni Kenwa published his handwritten copy of the Bubishi in 1934, I then subsequently find out, and I don't want to run back again and get another book, but I'd be happy to show it to you if you want, Funakoshi Gichin's first book, 1922, Ryukyu Kempo Karate-jitsu, or Kote-jitsu as some people pronounce it, actually also has the Bubishi as well in there as well.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, have you seen it?
Yeah, no, I haven't. Yeah, please. I'll talk to Okay, folks. Well, he's getting another book for us to take a look at because this is actually a nice opportunity to see a rare book. We were discussing the revision of the Bubishi that he's going to be going through soon and the contributions. And fortunately enough, he was nice enough to ask me to be one of the contributors to that new Bubishi. So we got to talking, and we wanted to explore the Bubishi, the history of it, and where he found it, and the different aspects of it. And that's what we'll be doing over this interview. Okay.
Candy story here. Sorry about that. I just was hoping. Oh God, I haven't seen that book for such a long time. Okay, first of all, this is Kenpo Gaisetsu by Miki Nisaburo. That's not it. This one is. That's another book by Motoku Choki, which I translated many years ago. This is the Karate no Kyohan. Actually, there's Karate no Kyohan written by Funakoshi Gichin as well in 1934, and the Bubishi is also in this one as well. This is another one of Mobumi's books. Here it is. Here. Sorry. This is the 1924 remake of Funakoshi's books that actually has photographs of Funakoshi in it. The templates for the original book, which I have right here, were destroyed in the 1924 Great Kanto earthquake. And as you can tell, they're just line drawings in this book from Funakoshi, which were done by the famous artist Hoen Hosugi, by the way. And it had to be redone because the templates were broken or destroyed in the fire. But this publication here is where the Bubishi first appeared in public, other than notes referring to it in my teacher's book. Haneshiro Choma wrote the first book on karate in October of 1905, called Karate Kumite, Fighting with an Empty Hand, which is where the term empty hand karate comes from in the first place. But this is an interesting text in that you can see in the back part, he refers to the Bubishi and publishes. Oh, and by the way, for your listeners, this book here, which is the 1934 Karate no Kyohan by Funakoshi Gichin, there's Oshima Tsunu translated this book back in the 70s, and I loved that translation for many years until Kodansha International did another publication, another translation, which again, in my opinion, supersedes the Oshima translation. And then, just about 5 or 6 years ago, Neptune Publications did a remarkable job on a new translation. I have that book as well. I helped them promote that book. It's the absolute best translation, and you can really, your readers will get a wonderful opportunity to really get much deeper insight, especially if you're using the hard fist and the escapes and counters that are also in the Bubishi. That's my specialty, by the way, escapes and counters. first point takedown, strangulation, throw grappling groundwork, digging into the cavities of the body and protected by the skeletal structure of the two. That's my specialty, by the way, in cut application two-person drills. But that book has an absolutely fabulous English translation. I highly recommend it. Would you like to see what it looks like, the cover, so your readers can...
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. I think they'd appreciate that. It's a remarkable source of information and knowledge here, folks, and bear with the empty screen for a little bit while he seeks this out, because this has given us the true history of where these things came from, and not the fictitious things that we hear today.
You know, it's interesting. My coach, my sensei, he has a great term. It's the 6 P's. You know, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. You know, so I really apologize for not being better prepared for today's interview.
Well, it's okay because it works better.
I have hundreds of books here and documents, as you would in the research society, you know. But anyway, okay. Now this was the original. I think they only did 1,000 of these or something, and this is a wonderful tomb of information. Very nice hardcover case. This is the big English. This is the big English translation of the. Look at the size of this. Is the original Japanese text. Look how big it is. Look how thick. But it's hardcover. Now, these are the letters from the company. Nice autographed copy there. I'll cherish that forever from the author. But you can't get these anymore. And I think I saw one on sale recently. Somebody was selling it for $500, but for $35, you can also get the paperback, and all of us can afford that. And so, Karate do Kyohan by Neptune Publications. I highly recommend it. And I know people say, well, I wouldn't buy that book because it's Shotokan. What a silly mentality, isn't it? You know, I mean, the Shotokan it's just a word. Actually, to tell you the truth, it was the name of Funagoshi Gichin's dojo, really. And it was his pen name as an author. And back in the day, the students wanted to honor him by opening a dojo for him. They called it a Shotokan, means place or hall. You know. So it would be the place where Shoto taught. It was in the post-war years where karate took on a different set of characteristics, unlike that which it originally came from. And it really, largely the JK forged the image in which modern karate would take shape. So they say the 3 Ks, the Kion, the Kumite, and the Kata. Those are modern practices developed largely in the 20s and 30s before karate became ratified as a modern martial art in December 1933 by the Dainippon Tokai. But that's beside the track. We'll save that for another conversation.
Sure.
I just want to get back to Drager telling me that, look at the culture, look at the mindset, understand something about their social values, the language, if you will, and in doing so, I speak, read, and write a language as well, so I spent many years to learn, and as you know, I lived in Japan for many years as well. And so, looking at that text through a different set of eyes and for a different purpose really set me on a new path. I bumped into a guy, this is still in my competition years, whose name is Teru Chinen. He was an Okinawan who lived out in Spokane, Washington. And he was a product of the Jundokan under Miyazawa Eiichi, who had studied, of course, under Miyagi Chojin, Kojin, Jundokan style order. And in those days, I was very friendly with Mr. Chinen. I wasn't his student as such. I was Mr. Kim's student, and I'm running my own dojo in Vancouver. But he took a shining to me. I was a champion in those days. I won many championships. Top 10 rated fighter, kata, and a weapons practitioner. I've been on the cover of those magazines and stuff like that. And so I was, a high-profile guy, got a lot of publicity, and I think he liked using me in demonstrations for that purpose. I was a big guy. He's a little guy, and but monstrous power and very knowledgeable. And we trained in Las Vegas together. I stayed at his house. I hosted him at my home in Vancouver. I had held seminars for him and was with him in Bermuda for the BIG championships and stuff like that, all in the early 1980s. And so we're in Las Vegas one year, and he says, he used to call me Hozoin. One of my weapons competition was the spear, and the Hozoin temple in Japan, they were famous for the monks using the spear. So he used to nickname me Hozoin. Hey, Hozoin! Oide! Come here. And I said, yes, Sensei, what is it? What's happening? He goes, I want to show you something. I said, okay. I said, what is it going? It's a secret. So he says, come up to my room. And I'm, yeah, okay. So, I go up to his room, and so he's got this really neat, it's got like a furoshiki, means like a little blanket you wrap something up in. So he's got this book, and it's wrapped up in this little furoshiki. He opens it up, and he goes, I want to show you something very important to me, and very few people I've ever seen before. And he opens it up, and as he opens up like this, I go, hey, that's the Mubishi. And he goes, oh.
That's good.
I got one at home. But I said, mine's got more pages than that. He goes, no, it's impossible. I said, yeah, I got it. He goes, and I said, I'll go to the next page. You're going to see these hands. There's 6 hands. And the next page, there's the flowers all over again. He goes, how do you know that? This is a hand-drawn copy of the Mubishi I got from my master, who got from his master, who came from Miyagi, and la la la. And I went, I got it in Chinatown for $2.
That may have made his day.
You gotta send it again. So when I get back to Vancouver, I photocopied it, and in those days we don't, a fax machine had only just recently been invented,
Right.
So I faxed it to him. He called me, but he said, I don't believe it. He said, unbelievable that you were fantastic. And so in my very first book, published by Ohara Publications through Black Belt Magazine, back in the day, I had Mr. Chinen, write the kanji for the cover of that book in classical kakubo. And in that, that was my first intro into actually studying Japanese and learning, something about reading and writing, that hiragana, katakana, furigana, and the language. And so I was only able to do a very superficial, it was just really I actually hired a Japanese interpreter to help me with that. And a Chinese guy, Ken Lowe, who was the head of the Western Canadian Chinese Kung Fu Association. Oh, they must hate me after all these hours. What's this mean? What's that mean? And anyway, and so it was Mr. Chinen then who really helped me a lot with, especially the Muchini-D, the sticky hands, the capturing, the controlling, the Kakie style exercises that are so vitally important in the two-person drilling to get to the escapes and counters, understand the geography of the body. It was a Frenchman who came up with the term meridian to describe our pathways, the energy pathways on the body. So,
right.
And so then that opened the door for me to say, what the heck is TCM? I haven't got a clue. Is that like FBI or CIA? What's this acronym meant? So of course, learning something about traditional Chinese medicine, little would I know in those days that I would actually, years later, work in academia and become a senior lecturer at I guess Australia's leading college of natural medicine here in Brisbane, the Australian College of Natural Medicine, which is where we hosted our martial art instructors undergraduate program for many years here. That's why I came to Australia in the first place. By living in Japan, I got recruited to come here and modulate this program. But again, off the subject, and let's just get right back on this. So as I started to peel, let's say, the metaphor here is the layers of the onion away from to be able to penetrate the abyss of the Mubishi, I just kept, from start to end, from the time I just said, okay, something, I'm going to use this project as my PhD dissertation. This is going to be as much an academic study as it is what I'm going to get from it physically.
Right.
So going down this pathway, it was 9 years from the start until Charles Tuttle Publication Company published my first edition. And by the way,
sure, no problem.
Give me a moment.
All right. We're getting back more into the Mubishi here, folks, and fascinating history he has and a world of knowledge. We were discussing on the earlier film that didn't come out, unfortunately, the 6G hands, and we'll get back into that topic a little bit later.
Yeah, sorry. This is my first book, by the way, and that's the Chinese writing or Japanese writing. Japanese is based on Chinese writing. If you hear me say that, it also has a sound syllabary called furigana. Katakana describes all things not Japanese, and hiragana is a way with which to learn how to pronounce Chinese characters in Japanese language. So often when kids are growing up and learning the language, they can't write Chinese calligraphy, but they can write the sound of it in hiragana. And then often when you're reading a newspaper in Japanese, you'll notice down the side, they call it a tiny little hiragana beside some of the more complex Chinese words. It's to help people who are not university educated to learn how to pronounce the concept. That's another one. Anyway, that's the first book in which I describe the Bubishi. This is the latest revision, and the one that you and I are now working on will be yet another revision to that.
Right.
That's a different one. Oh, this is just a Czech Republic translation, Italian translation, Spanish translation, French translation. Oh, here's what I'm looking for. This was the second edition of my Bubishi. I published this myself. This is the second one before we got the puddle. This is the third edition of my Bubishi, which was my favorite, my personal favorite, by the way, this one here.
What makes it your favorite?
But I just did everything myself. I even got the cover. I got the colleague of mine who was a master calligrapher to do the artwork for the Bubishi. I got which has been heavily used now, by the way. I got this crane off of a white crane book in Yongchun. I've been to China many times: Yongchun, Fujian, Shanghai, Shaolin Temple, Beijing, all over Guangdong. But this I got out of the school, one of the white crane schools in Fujian, where I went to practice, and they gave me an autograph book and so on. So I used the crane because it's largely based on Arhat or Monk Fist, Lo Han Chuan, and Heiguan, the white crane. And I did all the printing. And this is all pre-computer days, so I did all this myself, and I did the spine. And I even got a friend of my wife's from a very famous samurai family, by the way, up in Nagano. And some of her family make what they call washi. It's rice paper, and so even the cover of the book was made by our family type of thing,
Nice.
And by the way, a lot of the stuff that went in here never made it into the Charles Tuttle version, and we use completely different artwork and stuff like that. That's a long story. Makes for interesting talk. But this is my first edition of the Bubishi. And I only made 200 copies, and in this one, it's got a great lion on the back, shishi, lots of hand. But in this one, I also publish my Tita Jiao recipe, which is no longer it never made it into the new versions. And there's my little Tita Jiao recipe right there. For hand conditioning.
Right.
As opposed to Tita Yun, which is the internal stuff. You don't internalize that stuff. But you can see on my first version where I compare 3 different Bubishis, the application practices from no less than 10 different versions of the Bubishi, by the way, 10 different from different lineages.
Right.
That's number 1. That's number 2. That's number 3, and then that's so this became number 4. This was the 4th edition, which became the one that went worldwide. It became a bestseller for Charles Tuttle. It became one of the next to Aikido and the Dynamic Spear and their Bruce Lee books. This became the best traditional selling book, and it's gone into like 27 editions since then.
Right.
And then that was the next one, and so anyway, now my desk is I can rest my arms on these books. Look at that. And so, not to get off the subject, but so in that regard, the expansion of how I came to see what this book represented was really a very long journey, 9 years. And so in 1995, I believe, yes, 1995, the so-called first, which people think as the first edition of Bubishi, went worldwide. And I certainly used that at the College of Natural Medicine as one of the many books we used in our undergraduate study with 22 subjects in a 2-year full-time course. So as you can see, we did a lot of, many of my students from that era were not necessarily my martial arts students. You got to remember, I'm in a college, it's got full faculties in there, okay? It
Right.
just happens that the principal faculty was Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. So, I mean, there were people doing degrees in acupuncture, herbal pharmacological studies, massage, tuina, you know, it was all there. As certainly anatomy and physiology and all the kinesiology are there related studies. I was in the Faculty of Health Sciences, and so when I say that we went through this with a fine-tooth comb, that's an understatement to look at the physiology and the biology associated with these, with the pathology of these internal studies.
Right.
And so that's what I said when I used to meet and talk to a lot of people. Say, "Oh, I studied this, I did that." I said, "Oh, really? Can you tell me? Can we talk a little bit about? I don't know. Energy. What's energy? Well, I mean, I don't know. We just talk about the production of mitochondria or ATP or CP or the production of how it works in the body, how you burn it up, and then we took a look at some muscles and bones and blood passageways and a little on the chemistry, and I have no idea what I'm talking about."
Right. Well, sadly, the martial arts these days don't look at the anatomy as deep as they should. Most people are into their anatomy and how they can get physically stronger, faster, and more adept at doing whatever they're doing. But to take an internal look at what the body is and the weaknesses or the strengths thereof, it's sadly missing. And that's what we're trying to bring back with the Kyusho, and why I'm glad I'm working with you.
That's why I was so happy to help you in the end. As you well recall, that our beginning did not start off that amicably.
Right.
And that was, and nothing personal. This is never anything personal with me. I love the science. I'm not big on the politics. I was never trained as a diplomat. Honestly, my diplomacy skills suck.
Yeah.
And I'm not big with charlatans and all that type of stuff. So, you know, when I hear that, think green, put the tip of your tongue,
Right.
toe, no, that's snake oil stuff, you know, or let me, you know, like if I touch you here, I go like this, I think green, I go like that, you'll fall unconscious. Well, I'm fucking hammering you in the head first.
Right.
I just don't go down that street, you know, and so that's why I wanted to see a balance, and I see these other guys selling this stuff, and I just say to the people who would believe in that stuff, there's a whole world of scientifically based, physically functional, combative application that's worthy also of your attention. And I think that why I liked the road you ultimately went down is because you took the time to delve into the science, to understand how the human body works, its unique function and common anatomical weaknesses that ultimately dictate how percussive impact and seizing, which are the only two physical phenomena dealing with in domestic civil violence, that one against one empty-handed.
Right.
Not talking about the competition, not talking about the weapons, not talking about the gang-related fight, just one against one, you know, habitual acts of physical violence. Because you took the time to do that, and as soon as you were able to demonstrate that to me, I was happy to jump on board. And that you then subsequently took an academic approach to creating outcomes first, which dictate the lesson planning and the corresponding assessment criteria, how to get there, with exclusively Kyusho. Because, you know, a black belt in Kyusho is not the same as a black belt in Taekwondo or a black belt in Karate or a green belt in Kung Fu or instructor level in Arnis. It's one spoke on the larger wheel, and let's call it wheel Budo, or the fighting arts. And the fighting arts encompass many, many areas of study, and certainly understanding anatomically weak parts of the body and how to stimulate or sedate them is an art within itself, and one that you are very proficient at. And that's why I believe that it's so vitally important to the rest of the fighting arts to also embrace this adjunct as well, because without it, they're having a lesser practice. And people would challenge me. Well, look at in the UFC. I don't care what you look. I got students who are UFC champions, for God's sakes, and students who are BJJ black belts. And I didn't fall off a truck yesterday. This is not my first rodeo. Long before the UFC ever started, I was a shoot fighter in Japan. A lot of people don't know that about my background as well. But I was in the ring doing that with those guys. In those days, we didn't even have gloves, for God's sakes. In fact, if you wore a mouthpiece, people thought you were a coward. And I was the translators in Japan with these guys. Bringing them over, I'd already done the shoot fighting, the shoot boxing, the shuto with Saima Satoru, and look at, I was the sparring partner to Takada Nobuhiko. He was the pride. He owns the Pride stable, for God's sakes.
Right.
I like functionally effective. That's my. If it's not functionally effective, I don't want to be part of it. And so even with the drills that we're doing, everything that I drag out from the Bubishian, you have to test it to test the veracity of its function. You got to have aggressive resistance. So that's why I'm not even a guy standing there going, okay, anybody can do that. Why bother? You have to make it. But the Bubishi gives us the path.
Absolutely.
To understand it.
Absolutely.
It's just written in a language that is not functionally Western. Western culture, Western language, it's my 7 best friends. How, which, why, when, blah, blah, blah. In the Chinese language in which this book is originally written, it's a very flowery language, and it's disguised in a language and a culture that is long gone. And to the green serpent swings around the tree, it slips around the tree as the double dragons go out to sea. What's that mean? How do we understand that? What's so that's why I started using it. Person A does this, you drop down like a weight of 1,000 pounds. I kind of use a little bit of Western functional practice and try to keep a little bit of the Chinese flowering to it as well. Right. And that's the fascinating part. So when folks, the argument is, you have to learn TCM to understand the Bubishi. Well, you don't need to study TCM to learn how to fight, that's for sure. And you don't need to be an academic to learn how to fight, that's guaranteed,
Right.
And a lot of people who never took a day's lesson of martial arts in their life, they can be great fighters. It doesn't have to be that way.
Well, that's what we found when we were studying the Bubishi. It has an utter simplicity when you get down to the basics. You just got to learn how to read the book, and it takes many readings and rereadings and study to understand it.
I love reading. I learned early in school the value of reading. And that's not bad, having been a high school dropout. I would never go back to school until an adult to grab education with a passion. That's a different story. I was bored in school. I was one of those kids. And when I was a kid growing up in the 50s and 60s, if you weren't paying attention in school, you got the strap, or you got a cane, or you got punished. These days, if you're bored or staring out the window, the teacher sees, maybe this kid's bored, it might be worth retesting this kid. He may be a brilliant academic or something, and let's challenge him in a different way. I didn't grow up that way, so sports and athletics were.
It's the same thing with the martial arts. If you think about it, it's conformity. Most people are trying to conform to someone's patterns instead of trying to develop their own persona through what they know with the anatomical structures.
That's generally no fault of their our own in many ways, because the fighting arts, as the way they were taught in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, were largely an indoctrination-based learning. But what I mean to say by that is there's a mechanism in the fighting arts that helps perpetuate this conformist-based mentality. It's called the senpai-kohai system. And it's through imitative behavior, the trickle-down effect, that one person copies the way of another person, usually the mentor. So the junior learns from the mentor because he's trying to imitate the ways of the mentor. And then he passes on. It's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. And if you understand the anthropology of Japan, it's not difficult. And people always say that, I'm bagging the Japanese when I say this. Actually, I'm quoting a long list of cultural anthropologists, starting with Joseph Campbell and Edwin Reichauer's American ambassador to Japan, Ruth Benedict. There's a long list of Sword and Chrysanthemum of cultural anthropologists who tell us clearly that Japanese modern culture is based on a millennium of homogeneous, male-dominated, extremely discriminatory a culture of conformity nestled in a Confucian-based mindset, whose first tenet is filial piety, or ancestor worship. And the message that we get from ancestor worship is that there's no questioning of authority. Sound familiar? And so it's not, in Japanese karate, I started asking the guy, I know people who've been ostracized, kicked out of their organization for asking fundamental questions. Why do we do this? How do you do that? Why isn't it another way? How about if a guy did this? And that narrow-minded, we call that, and if you think outside that box, or you think any differently from what you've been taught, that's kind of a bad thing. Japanese in their culture have something called deru kui wa utareru, or deru kugi wa kui, and kui. One means peg, the other means nail. Deru kugi wa utareru, deru kui wa utareru, which means if there's a protruding nail, sticking up from the floor, what do? You get a hammer and hammer it back down again, so the nail goes back down. But if the nail pops back up again, for whatever reasons, you pound it down again. How many times you can pound the nail down before you realize that nail's not going to stay down, so I'm just going to pull the nail out?
Right.
This metaphoric scenario is for the guys who are we call them here in Australia tall poppies. If you're taller than the other poppy, they're going to cut you down to size, right? And so if you don't conform to what the standard norm is, they're going to criticize you, then they're going to oppose you, then they're going to ostracize you.
Right.
And that's that mentality that's seen in the conformance-based training. It's you're going to learn how to do the same thing the same way as everybody else. And just on body size, we're all unique studies of one.
Well, that's what Kyusho does. It liberates us. If you give the person a target, it's up to them and their body mechanics and what they've studied, learned, and what they're capable of to get to that target. And when they have that freedom, they like it even more than being someone's, like you said, monkey see, monkey do. And they get a lot better skill with a lot less time.
Having the eyes to see something from another point of view widens and deepens the scope of our understanding. And that's why Kyusho-jitsu is so vitally important to anybody who practices the fighting arts. Now, admittedly, the fighting arts can be many things to many people. I know at least it can be 5 things, if nothing else. It can be a form of physical fitness. It can be a form of self-defense. It can be a business. I used to make a joke that it was perhaps the oldest of the businesses, and then I thought, oh, well.
Yeah, there's another one.
But it was designed to be the second oldest to protect the first oldest.
There you go.
It certainly can be a lifestyle, a pathway, as I mentioned before, like the Tao, the way.
Right.
And of course, it can be a sport. And of course, the rules and regulations of whatever that sport is, they dictate the training methods you use to accomplish the outcome. That is taken for granted. So, the argument is always, which is the best MMA, Taekwondo, karate, and we'll just let them continue arguing over it. I just say this, whenever there's rules and regulations, the reality factor is removed, of course. And I'm not the person to criticize and say, just because you practice rule-bound training that you can't fight, for real, that's ridiculous.
Sure.
Certainly somebody who's at the peak of physical prowess and is in the fight game, probably going to be able to defend themselves. They're able to bite and squeeze the column, and it's just like anybody else, and use a baseball bat. So I'm just saying, as a rule-bound training is not the same as fighting up the park.
Right, and that's why Kyusho is even better, because it's an equalizer. We're not getting any younger. Okay, our prowess is going down just a tad, but the Kyusho gives us something that we can get better at, as opposed to something that we have diminishing qualities or diminishing skills with time and age. And I think it's invaluable, and I'm so glad that we correlated on the Shihankai, because there has to be a standard in the world. There's a lot of Kyusho practitioners around. It's getting more popular. So let's go back into the Bubishi, if we could, and focus on the Kyusho for the last 15 minutes or so before my light shut out too.
Kyusho is a very simplistic methodology, which is otherwise made terribly complicated by folks who generally don't know what they're talking about. Think green, feel the energy. Can you smell it? Just far. It's all about understanding how the body works. And I go back to the quote again. It's always been the human body, its unique function and common anatomical weaknesses, which ultimately dictate how seizing and percussive impact best impede motor function. That's the dispassionate aim of what self-defense represents, and that's what brings us to opens up into this wonderfully alluring and attractive mechanism through which there are many pathways to go down to enjoy a wonderfully fruitful life. And that's what you get by understanding Kyusho, is it adds such a vitally important element to your art. It makes it richer, it makes it deeper, it makes it more important. And whether you ever become God's gift of self-defense, it's not even important. It's just like that. I fucking hit him with a reverse punch and knock him out. There's no applications to karate. I just hammer him. You know, if you're 6 feet and 220 pounds or 195 and an MMA fighter, that's probably going to work for you. But how about how does a little guy defend himself against a big guy? That's really what we're talking about. Self-defense with no holds barred. And so going back to where we're talking about the value of this of Kyusho, it is an important pillar in the foundation of learning how to defend ourselves. And without understanding the body, without understanding its function, and we're not asking anybody to go into, anatomy and physiology is important, by the way, but just the chemistry aspect of it, okay? But then again, for the people who get captured by this, yes, I would say the chemistry is important as well. But just learning how muscles function, for example, the terms of movement, pronate, supinate, extend, contract, deviate, propionate, invert, avert. These are important movements. The neurology, something about the pathology, how energy works in the body, the sympathetic nervous system, just some simple brainstem to it. What actions cause painkiller reflex actions, cross-extended reflex? You stick your fingers in a CV22, a suprasternal knot, you get a gag reflex. I finger flick a guy in the testicles. I get he's looking for spare change on the ground. I slap his ears. I dig into the mandibular fossa or clavicular fossa. I need to know where these anatomical structures are located.
And that's the value of the bubishi.
When you know where an anatomically vulnerable part of the body is located, so he sees a hold of you, and technically, as in the moment, we can just stop time for a minute. The guys get you in the bear hug, and there's profiles behind all of these habitual acts of physical violence. And so if you knew ahead of time that, geez, this guy's just grabbing the bear hug, but my 2 hands are free, I slap his ears and gouge my finger into his eye, or if I got him in a guillotine, I can dig into up underneath the stomach 5 into the hypoglossal nerve. I'm going to get this painkiller reflex and pop on stomach 5, get brainstem twist, shut down the sympathetic nervous system. I've got a wonderful an application there, which can be explained theoretically and then practiced functionally. And so the benefit of knowing the body, how it functions, also necessitates then the kinetic energy transfer of how do I generate the force. Was it you or somebody just recently said to me, you mentioned something about leverage. I said, how can you teach the martial arts without understanding the mechanics, applied science?
Sure.
It's like saying you're an architect but you never went to school or something. It doesn't mean you can't build a house. It's just, I don't want to live in a house with a guy who doesn't understand how to make it structurally sound. The 5 ancient machines, the same ones that built the pyramids 5,000 years ago, are the same way their human body works. I mean, the body by itself is a fundamental classic 2 lever. And then classic 1 and classic 2 category levers are, the difference between category 1 on your limbs, your throat. If you're in your stomach and I'm sitting on your back and I grab you by the throat and pull you up, that's a category 1 lever. In the same way that we'll get you in an arm bar, I grab your wrist and I got a fulcrum wrapped around behind your elbow. The triceps tendon holds you stretch receptors using your body as well. That's a category 1 lever. Right. If I just switch the fulcrum with the effort, then I got a category 3 lever. The same for the wedge, the pulley, the screw, and the fixed axle. Those are the 5 ancient machines, and in functional two-person drills, that bring these things to life using what I refer to as the pixie dust. The pixie dust is a gradual to exponential investment of aggressive energy to test the veracity of your function. That's where you start resisting. I goes into my suprasternal, which is basically a brachioplexus, 6 sets of nerves behind and when I reach down and grab a hold and you pull away, or grab me by the testicles and you reach and grab my hand, or whatever, I stand on your foot and you go on the other one across the center reflex. I know ahead of time, through understanding the bubishi by having studied the Kyusho, knowing about my energy transfer, that I know ahead of time that's going to happen. And for that quick moment, as you tighten up your neck, and I pop you on stomach 5,
Your brother.
You're going to go to sleep. And if you're not going to go to sleep, you're going to be in such a stage that I've got all kinds of time to follow up. And if I'm just like a 45 or 50 pound girl, or sorry, a 65 pound girl, whatever weights of girls are, I'm in kilograms these days. So she's a 50 kilogram girl against a fucking monster attacking her, and she's able to understand her lesson, because, you know, hammering him in the face ain't going to do any good.
Right.
And she goes, oh my God, I got a quick, here's a conception vessel 22 gouge. I'm going to stop his ears and turn around and I elbow across 75. I'm not only going to be able to impede his ability to come back, I'll probably stop his motor function altogether. All roads lead to
It's good that you mentioned that, because there are several points you brought up, and I'd like to touch base with them briefly, and then I'll let you go. You mentioned, first of all, bleed out in the kendo. I believe that the Bubishi was based on Denmark, which is completely different from what I see as Kyusho. And you talk about, you see the blood times and the blood gates and all these different references in the Bubishi. I believe that those were times to bleed out. It was a military manual. They stuck people with spears, swords, arrows. They wanted to know exactly if the person was going to die fast, slow, or if the guy was ever going to get up and come back at them. Okay, you also mentioned the tools of the leverage. Yeah, let me finish one more sentence. The tools of leverage, the 6G hands. It's energetic transfer that gives you the leverage to get in between the important structure of the human body to maximize that Denmark or the Kyusho. We've even found out ways to delay the process, so we hit a person 6 months later, they have a ramification. So all these tools, all these little things that you've been talking about that are in the Bubishi are so critical, and people are overlooking them. So,
well, I don't disagree with anything that you just said, except for context. There is a part of the Bubishi that is brought to us from the original Wu Beiji, or that's the Chinese pronunciation of Bubishi, that was brought in by Mao Yuanyi back in the 17th century. But that was a 240 volume document, a massive collection of work brought together exclusively for the military, and it also covered occupation and troop deployment. But one of the documents actually dates back to 1543. It's called a Qi Xiao Xin Su, and it was written by Qi Guang, who was a famous military general. That part is believed to have also formed the basis of what they call cannon fist boxing, which is where Tai Chi comes from. It was a set of 32 two-person postures. You know, this guy does this, you can do this, you can do this. Now, in that, there was also, which is how you understand that acupuncture was discovered as well back in the day, when a guy gets shot with an arrow, and they realize that not only is he not dead, he's actually stronger, and in the same way that some of the herbal pharmacological herbs would treat. You see a snake, and a farmer sees a snake, and fucking snake, and he beats it half to death and throws it away, and then a couple of weeks later, he sees the same snake with little scars, but he's healed, and he doesn't know how that happened. So he beats him again, he watches the snake, he crawls away, and he starts eating this stuff, which he discovers later this is where panic ginseng comes from, as an internal history behind all this stuff. And it's the value of understanding it's the value of understanding historical contextual premise implicitly that gives us the power to speak about something as an authority in a competent way. So this Qi Xiao Xin Shu by Qi Guang, there are two parts of it. One is the weapon part. But the Bubishi manual that you and I are dealing with, it was never taken as a military combative manual. It is exclusively about hand-to-hand fighting. Now, it could be used after the fact on a battlefield. Our swords are sticking in each other, or we've lost our swords, or what anything. But it doesn't address the battlefield as such. It doesn't address the arena as such. it doesn't. It clearly says, in my terms, domestic violence. Now, I'm not today. The term domestic violence is usually associated with male and female, and expressly a man beating up a woman. And that's not, of course, exclusively the case in domestic violence. Lots of women beating up men. But as a rule, domestic violence happens in a civil environment, not on the battlefield of life and death, not with military campaigns. So while the tactical advantages may in fact be virtually identical because of the nature of brutality, it expressly says, bear hug, grab, fist. It doesn't say, if a guy hits you with a knife this way or shoots a gun at you that way. And so the deductions made are linear and not lateral from an anthropological point of view. And so that when we hear this and we see the understanding of medical science back then, now I'm not going to use the term better or worse because those are subjective terms, okay? And a guy who might be a scientist may give you one definition as a guy who, say, works in a boxing club, okay? Not speaking bad or good about either, I'm just saying those are the facts. Today, medical technology is far more advanced. And here's the interesting part about this dichotomy, is it's so advanced, it's finally able to look backwards and see the value of TCM. And so, the way they would treat a wound, and the herbal pharmacological part of the issue is I spent 2 years on alone with 5 colleagues of mine from Fujian who worked in one was a botanist, one was a retired English professor at the People's University of Fujian in Fuzhou. The other 3 were martial arts, well, 3 were martial art practitioners, 2 were masters, and 1 was the head of the Fujian Martial Arts Association. The 6 of us, and by the way, I had help with other guys in Japan as well who are also TCM people. One wrote a very famous book on acupuncture as well with Eugene Urquhart. He was a student of my master Kinjo, by the way. But that's another. There's a great story for another day as well. But the understanding of this, the other side is 2 people don't always look at the same thing the same way, but they can get the same outcomes or arrive at the same answers. So your answer is absolutely right. It's just a contextual premise of getting them. And mine is from a historical and functional point of view. And yours is from a scientific and a functional point of view. And so that part in the Bubishi where they say, the guy could bleed out. Yeah, of course. But we understand. And by the way, let's say you get drilled in the head. A temporal depression. Boom, you get hit. And let's say I knew. Now it's not the 21st century, whereas I get knocked out or I got a contusion or a sizable hematoma. I'm experiencing blackouts. There's symptoms to diagnose what the prognosis is going to be. And you got to get your ass down to a doctor right away. They're going to do a CT scan or X-rays. Just you've got a cracked skull and bleeding on the brain, and so we get an opera. So let's say that in 1794 you're living in some little village where the pocket of knowledge is extremely limited, and I go, something, and I'm a martial art master. I go, I'm going to wait till nightfall. I might even sneak some of this into his tea, some poison or some time. Delayed poison. That's how Yun Jar got assassinated by the Japanese in 1936 at the Qingwu Association. And there's another story for you. And then when he's a little bit woozy, I'm going to come over when he's sleeping, and I'm going to Phoenix knuckle him in the temple, a temporal depression. And when he wakes up, he's going to have this headache. He doesn't know what to do, and he hopes that he drinks more of this tea. And something I can almost tell you, on Thursday he's going to die. And so, absolutely, 100%. Not only do I believe in that, the thing is, by today's standards, a person who would experience these types of, let's call them meridian disruptions or energy disruptions because of an anatomical blow or across seas to create some type of impediment in the energy system, absolutely, they're going to have problems with it. The difference in today's medical science is that because our medical science is so advanced, that if you were experiencing such a thing, you then could go and have it diagnosed by 21st century medical science. And so the other stuff that you and I are also both aware of, that's probably stuff we don't want to probably give out to the generic learner who's looking to just grab something quick to use it in a very wrong way. And I think that you and I both know what that aspect of that Kyusho is all about as well.
Sure.
And that's you're right. It's evidently published right in the Bubishi, which was only for non-prying eyes back in the day. But I believe that that's also in a language that is ambiguous enough. What they say is as clear as the nose on your face. It is for those people who do the study. And like you, the people who have done the study come to have an enormous respect over humanity, because it's the balance between the brawn and the brain. And when you have philosophy that serves to govern the behavior of people who practice this brutal art, then a love of humanity gives you self-respect, which in turn helps you learn to respect other people as well. And therefore, the idea of never fighting, or if you have to fight, you use the most humane methods as possible. And that's why I say, understanding the Bubishi, I read it again last week. The more I read this book, the more I get from it. And as you know, we're just doing another rewrite right now. I got so much more to put into this work now. And that's why I've asked other professionals whose work I respect and admire to come and make contributions to this book. And certainly I respect you as a leader in your field. You're not a snake oil salesman knocking willing people out. You know, you understand the methodology, you have an academic background, because I helped you create the Shihankai. There's a wonderful way for people to learn this system. And Jesse Enkamp, who's the son of my Swedish representative for many years, who's just a young, brilliant kid. I say kid,
he's sharp.
He's a sharp guy who's bringing yet another player to the table here, another way to talk about the very same thing, which are having a whole new generation of people look at what brings us together, who might not look at it the way you and I talk about it. And then Andy Kloss, for God's sake, say, here's a guy, this kid is so smart. I say kid, he's not a kid, sorry, I don't mean kid. A German researcher, he's won awards from our organization over the years for his research, his writing, his publications. He also lived in Okinawa as a great weapons practitioner. But his understanding of both the Western and the Eastern fighting traditions, the synthesis to come out to find out that we're all doing really the same thing because of the human body. You can dress it up in a uniform and use a different cultural language and rituals, but you know, when it's like that. It's like the example I like to give people. Oh, my art's more unique than yours, or mine. And I say, you know something, pal? I'll tell you. Let me put a blindfold on you, and we'll get 5 guys from 5 different styles over here to come over and hit you, or punch you, or throw you, or choke you, or each of them can just punch you if you want. And then I take the blindfold and say, what style hit you first?
Yeah, you're not going to know.
It's kinetic energy transfer, and that's why we're all doing the same thing, yet albeit a different way. And that's the wonderful thing about I love it. There's a wonderful metaphor I use when I teach, and I try to help people say, we're all different. We're all a unique study of one, learning the same thing. And it's a highly individualistic practice. We don't expect everybody. It's not like we're trying to mass produce. You must do the kind of the way that Japanese guy stick his leg up overhead. If you can't do that, you'll never reach that temple. You'll never be any good. Right? You know, here's all your paint. Here's the paintbrush. Here's the palette to put the different colors on before you mix them together to create new colors. And here's your what do you paint on?
The canvas. The canvas.
Here's your white canvas. Now do me a favor. Paint me a flower. 10 guys got to come up with 10 different flowers. And that's the thing about art. There's no right or wrong. There's yours and there's mine. And that's why I love Choki Moto. Moto Buchoki was one of my, another guy who was a master of the Bubishi as well. That's another reason why I like the translation. I translated his 2 books, by the way. His 1926, his 1932 book as well. Is because that guy was such a great fighter, and he really knew how to use that skill. And of course, that was the dichotomy, the political and the social issue between him and Funakoshi Gichin. That's another, right. And there's a story for another one.
Right.
For you guys who are listening to this, I'm sorry I took 2 hours of your time and went down many different roads, but it's going down those different roads that make the difference. Don't get on the same road everybody else is on.
Absolutely.
What brings us together is highly individualistic. The beauty of its study is, and it's that metaphor with water. You can go over it, around it, through it. It might change conditions depending on the temperature. It can wear down even a mountain over a million years, appear one drop at a time, or it can be the most forceful thing in the world. Be like water, my friends. Don't resist. Go with the flow, as it were. Read the Bubishi and continue reading it. Continue asking as many questions as you can. And if you can't tell how passionate I am about this stuff, you haven't been listening to the interview.
Right. Well, sir, thank you so much for letting me be a part of the new edition. I'm quite honored. I've been studying it for a very long time. I've developed quite a new set of mindsets. And I say mindsets, plural, because it takes you in so many different directions. Always with the same core for me, with the Kyusho and the tools of the 6G hands. But again, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for helping me with the Kyusho throughout this period.
I think before we go, because we're talking about Chi hands, was the next, when in fact we ever get together if we can ever find a sponsor to host both of us together somewhere in the world, wherever it may be, I'll have to show you the Roki. Remember the name of the exercise with the 6 hands is, how you say it in Japanese is Roki Shu. Roku is each ni san chi go. Roku 6.
Right.
The 6 chi hands. I learned an exercise in Shanghai a long time ago for a reunion of the Qingwu Association. Which I'm a big fan of, by the way. That's another story. And I learned an exercise from I found out later he was the grandson, actually, of a Shaolin monk. And then I found out that the Shaolin monk, whose name was Miao, like a cat, Miao Xin, X-I-N, had a seminar in 1936 in Shanghai. He was kind of a rebel monk. They were looking to kill him, by the way. Anyway. That was an issue with Chiang Kai-shek. That's another story altogether. And one of the, Chiang Kai-shek burned the Shaolin temples to the ground, by the way, in 1927. Right. So the Shaolin monks were scattered, by the way. Anyway, and those people who were helping to support it, the Qingwu Association, sponsored a seminar with them under a different name, of course. And an Okinawan went to Shanghai with his Chinese counterpart as a translator to study the fighting arts there in Shanghai in 1936. His name, of course, was Miyagi Chojin. And anyway, long story short, much of what Miyagi would bring back, he would create a kata called Tensho, which means rotating palm, by the way. And the hand rotates so that these 6 hands can be exampled or exhibition in this exercise, to develop both the internal and external power. Hard chi is outside, soft chi is on the inside, right? So, and anyway, so I'm learning this 2-person exercise. And it wasn't really until I was on the airplane, I videotaped a lot of stuff back then. But I'm on the airplane going home trying to remember this, exercise. I go, geez, that looks like Tensho. Because I'd only been doing it with the 2 persons, I hadn't been doing it with one. Oh my God. And that's when I found out that the guy I learned from was the grandson of the Shaolin monk who had the seminar in 1936 with the Qingwu, who had taught me Miyagi Chojin and Go Kenki or Wu Xian Hui. Was the Chinese, it was the tea merchant in it's just wonderful how it all goes together, how it all,
amazing.
And how it all circles on the Bubishi. And as I say, that all, and it doesn't have to be Japanese style or Okinawan style. On another discussion, I'll show you how the Korean part works in there. And I'll show you how I'll clearly illustrate from a historical and anthropological point of view and a technical point of view, how modern karate, after it was established in December 1933, and then proliferated as a sport and a cultural recreation in the post-war years, bringing the soldiers and the foreigners who would then be living in Japan closer to understanding this culture, its language, the rituals, and so on, became a kind of a gateway practice embraced by we here in the West, and how it would become a rule-bound practice. I will show you how that rule-bound practice then what's the term I want? Re-influenced the subsequent growth and direction of its original practices in Okinawa. So today in Okinawa, I know there's Okinawan karate. But I tell you this: if you're wearing a gi or a belt, calling the word sensei, bowing in the dojo, you're pretty much doing Japanese-based karate. Okay, although there is, as you know, a powerful movement now with few people at the gateway, ushering people through to say no, more on two-person drills. More on joint locks, pressure point, takedowns, strangulations, throws, grappling, slash, studying the bubishi. Of course, there's still the old school people in Okinawa who are still embracing those old practices, you know, and hopefully with any luck, this type of work that we're doing, the study of the bubishi, the chi-hands, will help usher in a wider audience to embrace this practice. And with that, I will say thank you very much.
All right. I look forward to somehow meeting up with you. We fly by each other going on our trips. One of these days we're going to...
I'm on my way now to Canada, the States, and South America, but you're heading back over to Europe or somewhere?
I'm going to Taiwan next.
Oh, you're coming here.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. So with that, I'll bid you a good night, and thank you for your time, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
And as I'm just going to take a little screenshot here or there to commemorate that, I'll post it on. And let me know when you post the interview so I can go have a look at it as well, watch some of the comments, and maybe help answer some of the questions that are asked.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, sir.
Have a lovely, I guess, evening. It's morning here.
Yeah, it's night. All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.